Hello, I'm Adam and today I will show you how to configure a Marlin firmware basing on my Ultimaker 3D printer. So, first we have to download the Marlin firmware. So we have to go to the Marlin firmware.org website. Then there is a button to download this. And we can see there are a few versions of Marlin. Previous release is old release and you don't have to use it. The latest stable release, this release is Marlin is calling this release as a production release, so it should be most stable and it may not have a latest bug fix like in bug fix snapshot. And I recommend using bug fix version because the version 1.1.9 is left as stable at this point, and the development is stopped because there is a 2.0 alpha version and the latest version is 2.0, but as it says it's alpha, and to be honest I don't want to be an alpha tester. So we have to go with the bug fix version because it has updates with bug fixes, but don't download from this source because it will be anyway older. We have to go to GitHub page, we have to go to bug fix branch, then we can see this branch is still alive because latest update was 6 days ago. That was fixed for creatively better Thermistor, but whatever. We hit download and download zip, and we have to open the zip file, and it looks like this. We go to the Marlin folder and we have to find the Marlin Arduino file, then we have to run it. We have to head to the configuration.h file, and there is a main config file for the 3D printer, and I will describe what you have to change there to configure your 3D printer to have a very basic configuration, because the 3D printer settings may change when you will calibrate your 3D printer, but anyway it will be good base to do your first print. So we have scroll down, and first thing to change is the motherboard, and it's place where we define which motherboard we have. So it's default ramps 14 EFB, and what right there. So we have to go to the other files, then we have to find boards.h file there, and we are in boards.h file and we can see all boards for the Marlin. In my case, the board in the Ultimaker is the MKS Gen 1.4, so it's this. So let's copy that and go back to configuration file, then paste it. Okay, and the board type is set. Next we've got the 3D printer name. It's the text where printer is ready. So in idle we can write there best printer, and next we can go to filament diameter, and if we are using 1.75 filament, we have to write there 1.75, and we can scroll down to thermal settings, there is a list of thermistors, and if you know which type of thermistor, which model of thermistor do you have, you can set it there, but I'm using a very generic sensor, so one is 100k thermistor, and that's it. And there we set which thermistors, which temperature sensor we've got. We've got one thermistor for the hotend, and the heatbed has one, so we have to write there one. That means the heatbed has one thermistor and the hotend has one thermistor. And then we have to scroll down for the max temperatures, and if you are going to print and it's safety, so take it real. And we've got the max temperatures. If your 3D printer, if your hotend has the Teflon tube, that means you anyway shouldn't print above 260 degrees. Mostly for the ABS it's 230 degrees, so I recommend setting there something like 240 or 250. Yeah, so let's set there 240. You can set it everywhere. And then the heatbed max temperature. Printing with ABS requires 100 degrees. Let's leave it at 105 or 110, because sometimes a bit higher than 100 is better. And next we've got the PI and D settings, and there are settings for PI and D for the hotend. At the first run we leave it as it is. Then after we do a PID tuning, we have to edit these values and flash the firmware again to make it permanent. and next we've got PI and D for the heatbed, and we have to enable PID temp bed, so by uncommenting this. And there are PI and D of the bed, and same as hotend, let's leave them at the default, but when we do a bed PID tuning we have to write their values which we've got from the PI and D tuning. And then scrolling down, Endstop settings, and we have to check where we've got the endstops and which plugs we are using. And there I'm showing the Cartesian X, Y and Z axis, and in the Ultimaker case my X is on the 0, so I will use X min plug, but the Y-axis is homing to the max, so we have to comment this and uncomment the max plug. And same as Z-axis, because the bed is going down, that's the max position, so we have to uncomment the Z-max. Okay, and next we can invert our end stops, because there are normally closed and normally open end stops. What's that? Normally closed end stop is normally connected, so let's imagine a switch. When we press it, it's closing the carrot, and that's normally open, because without pressing the carrot is open. And the normally closed switch is has a closed keyroot when we are not pressing, but when we press, the keyroot is opening. So you have to determine which endstop you have. I've got in Ultimaker standard endstops, standard switches, which without pressing are not closing the keyroot. So I have to invert their everything. If you are not sure, you can leave it at false, but if your endstops will react wrong, you can switch there to true or false, and that's okay. And scrolling down, we have the stepstick types, and we can define which stepstick we've got installed, and it might optimize the 3D printer. So in my case, I've got the TMC 2208 stepsticks, so I have to define it everywhere, X, Y, Z, and the E0, and uncomment that. And when you have select your stepstick, that you may have to install the library for the TMC, and to do that you have to go to settings, you have to go to manage libraries, and after it gets updated, you can write their TMC 220. Yeah, and you have to install this library. Then with this you will be able to compile the Marlin sketch when you have set the TMC 2208 stepsticks. Okay, let's scroll down and movement settings, and these values, it's steps per millimeter. You have to determine how your stepsticks are set. For example, if there are 1 to 16 set, and there is a standard G2A belt, the X and Y will be 80, and the Z-axis depends on the lead screw pitch. I will leave in the description a link to the calculator to determine the values. And this option is steps per millimeter for your extruder, and there are two calculators for that, and you have to calibrate your extruder, and this is place where you write the correct steps per millimeter value. Okay, scrolling down, and there are acceleration values there, and it's hard to determine if you have to lower these values. For most 3D printers you don't have, but if you see if your 3D printer is accelerating too quickly, then you might lower this a little bit, I mean to 2500 or something around this, and experiment with these values. But in most cases, let's leave them at the 3000. Also, it depends on your 3D printer type, because if you have a lot of belt, it might help to lowering this value. Okay, scrolling down, and there is important option to invert the stepper direction. There are two ways to do that. First way, you can reverse your stepper motor plug, and it will change the motor direction. And the second option is that you can change the true or false, and it will invert the stepper direction. So for example, if you are increasing the X value, the stepper motor, the carriage should move right. If it's going left, that means you have to invert your stepper motor direction. Okay, let's scroll down, and there is a direction to home, and like in the Ultimaker, the Y home is the max, so I have to set 1, and the Z home is max, so I have to set 1. Then let's scroll down, and there we've got the bed size. You have to measure which area is accessible by your nozzle and write these values in the max. Okay, let's scroll down. Okay, and important option, preheat, and these values will be set when you select the preheat option in your on your 3D printer LCD. So there are two groups of the temperatures. First one is for the PLA and second one is for the ABS. So we can change it to 200 for the PLA and 65 for the heatbed. Then the ABS you can set it to 230 and 202 and 102 for the heatbed. Then let's scroll down, and we can select the language, and next we have to SD card support. We have to uncomment this to be able to print from the SD card. Then this option may be important when you have your LCD and you turn your encoder slightly. You can determine it has something like half step and full step. You have to check if one click is changing option by 1 on your LCD. If not, you can uncomment it and see how it changed. And you can change this option if, for example, you have to do 2 clicks on the encoder to move one menu item down, for example, or increase temperature by 1. Let's scroll down, and there is an option reverse encoder direction. If you are turning the clockwise and the value is decreasing, that you have to uncomment this, because for me it's normal to turn the encoder clockwise to increase the value, and turn the counterclockwise to decrease the value. Let's scroll down. The LCD settings, yes, we have to define which LCD we've got, and in my 3D printer, yeah, and there you have to uncomment which LCD you've got. There are so many types of the LCDs, and I will set the backup LCD, because this touch LCD is not working as standard LCD, but it's working as the host. So it's printing like from the computer. So if you have standard LCD, you have to uncomment it there. And I will, for example, in other 3D printer, I've got the MKS LCD Mini, and let's uncomment this there, and the LCD looks like this. Yeah. So basically you have to find which LCD you've got by checking the name and uncomment the line with this LCD. And that's it, I think. Yeah, and that's it. It was the most basic 3D printer setup, and with these settings you should make a first print. Then you will have to calibrate your 3D printer, but I think it's good base for the calibration. We can check, is it compiling? And there is a feature about saving to EEPROM your config, but I don't recommend using this, because when you save something to EEPROM memory, you won't have the latest config in this Marlin sketch. So I recommend changing settings there to have it permanent, and after firmware is changing, your settings will stay in the Marlin sketch. And as we can see, it successfully compiled, so that's ready to upload. So thanks for watching, please leave a comment and hit the subscribe button. Bye!